I want to take a moment before we begin to give you an idea of what you can expect from today's forum. We're going to have opening statements from each of the candidates. They'll have 5 minutes to give you the elevator speech. Usually it's about 2 or 3, so candidates, you can let it breathe a little bit today. You'll have 5 minutes for your opening statement. Then I will sit down at the cocktail round here, minus the cocktail, and we'll have a couple of questions, and we'll end with some rapid fire questions so we can get as much content as possible into a short amount of time while respecting everybody's time this morning. And then each candidate will have closing remarks that will last 2 minutes each, leaving you with something as we all head to the ballot box in a few weeks. A reminder, this is a forum, not a debate. Our hope, of course, is to gain knowledge from each candidate in an effort to make a more educated decision. Please be respectful of the varying perspectives and the information we are going to hear today. As I mentioned, each candidate is going to have 5 minutes. We will introduce them in alphabetical order, and that means that leading us off for a 5-minute opening remark is Bob Beaupre, Republican candidate. Mr. Beaupre?
Jim, and thanks to all of our sponsors today and our hosts. It's nice to be back in Arvada. I see so many friends. When I was honored to be the 7th Congressional Representative in Congress and represented, of course, Arvada, I made a lot of friends. Claudia and I called Arvada our home. When I see the overpass at Old Town, I have to reminisce a little bit about some of the things we got done while I was in Congress. Colorado 58 flyover is the same for me. So actions have consequences, and I guess I'll use that as a lead into why I'm in this race. Colorado is a special place, a very special place, the only place I've ever called home. I'm a 3rd generation native on my dad's side, 5th on my mom's. Spent a lot of that, as many of you would know, in rural Colorado. We've kind of gone full circle back to the ranch now. We've got a mountain ranch up by the Wyoming line, and raising bison, so yet another dream fulfilled for me. Along the way, I did some community banking and touched a whole lot of people as a partner in their dreams, and also did some real estate development, again served in Congress, but came to understand and respect the people in the state. The sense of independence and believing in oneself. And as I ask people, how you doing? We're in Colorado after all, so naturally they say we're pretty good just by being here. But they'll almost universally come back to, but we don't feel great. We don't feel like Colorado usually feels. Why is that? Well, they'll talk about still a sense of anxiety and a sense of being weighted down and something holding them back and just not sure. And especially 5 years into a supposed economic recovery, still wondering where's that good time at for them. So much of the state is still struggling. Grand Junction, negative economic growth last year. Colorado Springs, negative economic growth last year. Pueblo, barely stayed stagnant, stayed steady economic growth-wise. Talked to a professor at CU this week, and he confirmed what my calculation showed. If we had a full employment economy right now, where we historically do in Colorado, we're about 200,000 jobs short of where we ought to be. And a whole lot of people that do have a job, it's just barely that. Part-time job, not really the job they want. Those career opportunities don't seem to be in Colorado like once they were. In fact, there's a number of economic studies that show that opportunity is going to other states. 5 states around us have better employment numbers than Colorado does 5 years into a supposed Obama-Looper economic recovery. That's not the Colorado we know and deserve. When I ask people what's holding them back, what's got that anxiety in their belly, they invariably say it's government. Government. Standing not just on your toes, but government up here a little bit farther. We've got government on the people instead of up by and for the people. And I think that's wrong. I don't think that's the Colorado way. I don't think it's the American way. The question on the ballot is really this. Do you believe and trust in people, or do you believe and trust in government? Where I come from, and the principle that always guided me, was that people solve the problems. People have the goodness and the decency and the genius and the creativity and the passion that made this the greatest state and the greatest nation on God's green earth. Now, on this governor's watch, 2,000 new regulations have been implemented. He talks about the ones that he's rolled back or amended. 200 of those were from the Boxing Commission. At the same time, he's actually implemented a number that are holding people down. We're going to go through and remove those, audit all of government. And if it isn't pro-freedom, pro-job, pro-believing in you, pro-economic expansion, pro-opportunity, the kind of opportunity that Claudia and I sensed in this state, lived in this state, dreams came true for us we never imagined even dreaming. That's the Colorado I envision. A Colorado where you, your kids, your grandkids, where this can be the envy of the nation, where we don't have to make excuses and be embarrassed and try to explain what's going on in this great state of Colorado. It's time to celebrate again. Celebrate the greatness of Colorado. Let's be great again. That's my vision, and that's my pledge to you as your next governor, to work hard every single day to make this that greatest state on God's green earth. Thanks very much for letting me be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Beaupre.
Reaped 75% of its revenue from marijuana arrests and seizures. How are we going to make that up? In 2000 and 2001, Chris Christie, the head of the Republican Governors Organization, the man handing out campaign funds, was the lobbyist for one of the nation's largest private prisons. In 2013, $2 million of our taxpayer money was given to a prison in Burlington and 2 other private prisons because we didn't have enough of our citizens in jail. We have to pay attention to our freedom. We must understand that doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity. Today, we have a chance to change that. I suggest that we pay great attention to this election. Thank you very much.
On to our next independent candidate for a 5-minute opening statement, Paul Noel Fiorino.
Good morning, and thank you for hosting the first time you've had all candidates in one room. And this is an opportunity, again, to respect the fact that Mr. Beaupre and Governor Hickenlooper together have been debating very strongly, and yet the other candidates, the other 4 candidates on the ballot, of course there's a write-in too, but you have to write out the name. But as far as this opportunity as an unaffiliated, I started my campaign in 2006. How many of you saw me on the ballot? That's right. I was again on the ballot in 2010. How many saw me on the ballot? Well, I'm on the bottom of the list this time, and I started my campaign in 2006 with 1 penny. And everyone has a penny. And the value of 1 penny is the value of 1 vote. And folks don't find out what their education, we're all talking about education, a big problem here. We don't even educate ourselves about our candidates. It's true. We don't educate ourselves in the fact that independent is something totally different than unaffiliated. And that unaffiliated is what the Secretary of State acknowledges. So as the first in the history of Colorado to access the ballot by petition, by each person I walked up to, are you registered to vote? Would you like to make history by putting me directly on the ballot? Here's my petition. Out of 1,300 I collected this year, 1/3 were not found. I had another 2.5 weeks to go out and collect another 300. Another 120 not found. Apathy is our problem, folks. We have an apathetic society that is not getting involved in government. Never mind government getting in we're not doing what John F. Kennedy had said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I had the great opportunity to see John F. Kennedy when I was 9 years old at the Air Force Academy. I grew up out in Douglas County. I grew up on a ranch. I grew up throwing the horse, riding the horse, taming that horse, understanding that Colorado is about a horse and all the wonderful qualities about that. I was born in the world year of the horse, 1954. I found myself in the performing arts. I performed at this great space. The Arvada Center hosts the Henry Awards. And I want to just have a moment of silence for the great father of theater, Henry Lowenstein. Henry passed away this week, along with another champion of the arts, Randy Weeks of the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. I also believe that arts and the humanities have to play a role, not only in government, but in our schools. We have a right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. We got to put the whole child together. And unless we do that and take our education in that direction, and I believe it will happen. Walter Isaacson was just on Charlie Rose the other night talking about his new book, The Innovators. The Innovators is all about the fact that these people, that a lot of you don't know, you know Steve Jobs, of course, but they brought the arts and humanities together with technology. And that's what needs to happen with this state. We are at the pinnacle of leading this state, not only in the hemp industry, which needs to go forward. And that's where our riches are, frankly. That's the new gold rush. The other thing is that our environment is extremely important. I just came down the mountain from Lake Granby this weekend, crossing the Colorado River, which is about as wide as this platform here. And I saw the hunters out there, and I saw the folks that are wrapping up their boats for the season. But tourism is our strength. And until we realize that's our identity as well. From back in the day, 1858, 59, into the 60s and 70s, we brought excursionists from the East. And now I have the opportunity to even bring on a capital campaign for our state theater, the Tabor Opera House. So that's what my campaign is concentrating on, is the arts and humanities. And this political theater is one thing, and the money that goes into this political theater is disgusting. We need to, again, put our emphasis on the nonprofit sector. I'm Paul Noel Fiorino. I'm asking for your vote on November 4th. Please do your homework. Thank you.
Independent, Mr. Harry Hempy. Hi. Pleasure.
Okay, hi. First of all, I'm not an independent. I'm a Green Party member, and if you don't know the Green Party stands for grassroots democracy, for nonviolence and everything, for sustainable long-term ecological wisdom, and finally for economic justice and social justice for everyone. Thanks to the Arvada Chamber of Commerce for orchestrating this event. This is the 5th open debate or forum for governor this year, the 5th and last open forum. And you should all realize that the Arvada Chamber of Commerce has been very persistent in getting us all together, and they deserve recognition for for not taking no for an answer. So this is a great event. It's hopefully a precedent for the way debates and forums will be held in the future. Yes. And so that's really good. I want to talk about three things that have not gotten ample attention in the debate so far. Starting with wages. Wages are falling in Colorado. They've been falling, they've been falling certainly since the turn of the century. The median real wage in Colorado has gone down 11% in the last 14 years. And just in the last 3 years, median wages have fallen 5%. That means the average worker in Colorado has 5% less purchasing power than did when Governor Hickenlooper took office. We claim we're having economic recovery, but it affects or benefits about 10% of the population.
Yes.
That's not right. So for wages, we can't tell the transnational corporations, which, by the way, employ the majority of the minimum wage workers in the state. We can't tell them what to pay their workers, but we can do something. We can raise the minimum wage in Colorado.
Yes.
And I don't have a lot of faith that the legislature is going to jump to that. So what I propose is that towns and cities be given the right back to set their own minimum wage. That right was taken away by the legislature in the 90s, and I'm asking for that to be repealed, and I would ask all of my fellow candidates to join me in working for that. The next issue that hasn't had a lot of discussion is clean, renewable energy development. Sorry, I misspoke. I think they say clean, responsible energy development. Fracking and oil and gas development is neither clean nor responsible.
Yes.
Every day, on average, well, there's more than 365 oil spills per year. So that's an average of an oil spill per day under the ground. Emissions of greenhouse gases and toxic gases happen 24 hours a day, every day in Colorado. We're putting polluted fracking water back into the earth and taking it away from our water supply
Yes.
all the time. That's not clean, and it's not responsible. We need to get on to renewable energy, and at a minimum, we need to stop putting more oil and gas development in Colorado. There are 15 exemptions in the severance tax code for oil and gas development that costs us $250 million a year in taxes. We need to stop that. And finally, we need to have, I have 3 seconds. So I'll talk about educating voters some other time. Thank you.
Matthew?
Good morning. Good to see everyone here today. My name is Matthew Hess. I am the Libertarian Party candidate for Governor of Colorado. I'd like to thank the Chamber for putting together this monumental effort, this wonderful event today. I appreciate it so much. It's great to have all the candidates here today. And I really think the Chamber has gone all out on this, and I want to extend my sincere appreciation to the Arvada Chamber of Commerce. Once again, Cammie and everyone else, thank you very much. My platform itself can be summarized into a single sentence. I want to leave you alone. I'm tired of government interfering with your businesses, with your lives, with your choices, with your freedoms, and with your rights. You can visit my website at www.matthewhess.org and definitely read all about what I stand for and what I believe. But overall, it's about getting government out of your way for once. It's about pulling things back and letting the innovators and entrepreneurs succeed in Colorado once again. not constantly hampering their efforts, not constantly tripping them up with additional regulations, laws, and interference. It's about ending that interference and getting Colorado successful again, but not through government, but by the absence, by pulling government back, by getting government out of the headlines and back onto the sidelines as the referee belongs. So, what does that overall look like in Colorado? To me, it looks like success. It smells like prosperity and freedom once again. And I like the sound of that, and I hope you do as well. So I'm asking for your vote this fall to support Matthew Hess for governor, because I believe the state needs to take a step back. I think everyone here will agree with me that that is the right thing to do. And I'm sure you've heard the notion of a wasted vote. It's the argument against third-party and independent candidates. And what I can tell you is that a wasted vote is something that is betraying yourself. You only waste your vote when you don't vote for what's in here.
Yeah.
So this fall, I ask you, I implore you, please vote your heart, and let's chart a new course for Colorado, one of freedom, one of peace, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
And now our next candidate, the incumbent, Governor John Hickenlooper. Governor Hickenlooper? And as the governor makes his way up, I'll let you know that he is providing our last of the 5-minute opening remarks, and then he'll join me at the cocktail round here. We'll have a couple of questions and answers to follow. Governor, pleasure.
Good morning. I might be a little fuzzy. You know, I spent 16 years in the restaurant business, so I've never, first thing in the morning is not the best time to catch me on at my sharpest. I want to thank the Arvada Chamber for pulling you all together. I appreciate the other candidates being here, and certainly I appreciate the audience being here. You see, especially with all the attack ads, that our form of democracy really is dependent upon people showing up and paying attention and listening to the differences in the different candidates and the different campaigns. 4 years ago, we came in, the state economy was upside down. We had a $1 billion budget deficit. We were 40th in the country in job creation. I got Ken Lund, who was the managing partner at Home Robertson Owen, to come help to take over the Office of Economic Development. We did a statewide, bottom-up economic development plan to try and really change the way the state thinks about itself, to be more pro-business, but with high standards, right? It's Colorado, we've got to protect our air and our water, but to really be pro-business. And how can you cut rules and regulation? In those next 4 years, or next 3.5 years, we had the 2 worst drought years since the Great Depression. We had the 2 worst fire seasons in the state's history in terms of destruction. And we had the most destructive flood in the entire history of the state last year. We had 13 federally declared disasters. That's more than any state has ever had in a 4-year period. And that doesn't include the shootings in Aurora or the high school shooting in Arapahoe High. And yet through all that, the state did become more pro-business. Through all the different state agencies, we cut over 1,500 different rules and regulations. We significantly simplified or modified over 5,500 other regulations. And there have been some great, going through even all those challenges and issues between the floods, the droughts, the fires, the Colorado moved from 40th in job creation to 4th. We are now the #1 workforce in America, according to Forbes magazine. According to Business Insider, these are reputable national magazines. Business Insider last month ranked us the #1 fastest growing economy. And we did that partly by attracting some big businesses here. We used to have 7 Fortune 500 headquarters. Now we have 10. 2 of those we attracted, DaVita and Arrow. The level 3 actually merged with Global Crossings and became a Fortune 500 company. But the real key was to attract entrepreneurs, right? And that's not just by making the state more pro-business, although I think we did change the identity, the brand of the state in that regard. But what we really focused on was, how do we make this place more attractive to young entrepreneurs? People that not only come and build a business, but they're going to build a life. They're going to invest themselves in the schools and the local community, focus on quality of life. And that means healthcare. So we went after, I mean, Colorado's always been the thinnest state, but we haven't always been the healthiest. And we started 4 years ago saying that in the next, in the next period of time, we are going to become the healthiest state in America. So we've reduced prescription drug abuse by 20%. We've expanded our healthcare coverage, so now we're one of the 5 top states in terms of reducing the percentage of our population that doesn't have health insurance. Within that, we released the average premium increases a few weeks ago, and our average, if you include, just look at individual premiums, the increase was 0.71%. If you include small businesses and large businesses and average them all together, it was just about exactly 1% increase. That's after decades of double-digit growth. We took on teenage pregnancy. We provided either free or almost free long-acting reversible contraception upon request to 15 to 25-year-olds. And let me be clear, in every case we talked about abstinence first, especially with teenagers, that's the best method of family planning. But providing those long-acting contraceptions, we have reduced teenage pregnancy in the state of Colorado by 40%. Right? Within that same demographic, we reduced abortion by 35%. And those are, again, numbers that are national leaders. And I think you look at education, we added 8,200 early childhood education slots. We provided the READ Act, make sure third graders, we started intercepting kids who have reading challenges. I have dyslexia, but kids like me, so we intercepted them when they're 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. So we've been trying to attract entrepreneurs as hard as we can. And if you look at it, the Kauffman Foundation did a study last year that 4 of the top 10 metropolitan areas in the country in terms of technology stars per capita are in Colorado. Right? That's a remarkable achievement in a very short term. Listen, I'll finish up. Colorado is a place that's going to be defined more by its future than its past. And our future is going to be connected to innovation and technology, new ideas, youthful energy. It's not going to be connected to the divisive attacks and battles that we see so often in politics. I think Colorado has a chance to be a national model in so many ways. We've had a great 4 years. We want to take the next 4 years and take Colorado to that next level. Thank you very much.
From the bowl is we have experienced some very divisive issues in the last few years that have led to some Colorado counties exploring seceding and forming their own state. As governor, what would you do to repair those relationships and bring the state back together, or are you in support of this happening? I think I know the latter part.
No, we certainly weren't in support of the latter happening. There were a number of issues. Certainly the first and foremost was gun safety and the universal background checks turned out to be very divisive up in northern Colorado. We did go back and we circled. I went to almost every county but one. We had meetings in and just gave them some of the basic facts that didn't come out during that discussion. We went back and looked at, we got to half the gun purchases in 2012 and just gave those statistics out. There were 38 people in Colorado who tried to buy a gun in 2012 and we stopped them through a background check. Again, we got to half the background checks. 133 people convicted of sexual assault, 620 burglars, 1,300 people convicted of felony assault. 420 people had a judicial restraining order not to see their former boss or their former spouse. They tried to buy a gun and we stopped them. And people kept saying crooks aren't stupid, why the rest of us had to do background checks. 236 people, when they came to pick up their guns, we arrested them for an outstanding warrant. So we got that information out. Again, it didn't heal all the issues. 252 was an energy issue there that we needed. It was a complicated bill, but it allows us to take waste and put it to energy. It allows us to take methane that's being leaked into the atmosphere, burn that as energy. It was a complicated bill that a lot of people in rural Colorado also didn't appreciate.
All right, as governor, what steps would you take to lessen the regulatory burden on small businesses in Colorado?
We've gone through a process, we've called it pits and peeves, of trying to figure out in every place where are the appropriate regulations and how can we make it simpler and easier, not just for a business to start, a business to function, right? I got laid off as a geologist back in '86. We opened the wine coop in '88, back when the rent in Lodo was $1 a square foot per year. But I remember even then there was a lot of regulation. There's more now than there was then. So we've been going through the Office of Regulatory Affairs, trying to reduce every regulation we could. As I said, we've eliminated 1,500 regulations. That's a process. The government can't just come in and say we're not going to have any regulations. And as we've added new regulations around oil and gas, we're the first state to regulate methane. We did it with the environmental community and the oil and gas industry side by side. And we guaranteed that our deal with the oil and gas was that every dollar they spent would make the air cleaner, and there would be no red tape, and then we'd make sure that they got their fair share of credit. And I think in the end, when we got the methane regulations done, we had the executives of Anadarko and Noble side by side with the environmental community, both saying they were successful. Oh, sorry.
Okay. The final question we have for you, and then we'll get into some rapid. We have struggled to attract developers and builders to Jefferson and Adams County to build for-sale multifamily housing as opposed to building only apartment complexes. The current state of construction defects law seems to stand in their way. What will you do to reform construction defects law and bring back entry-level priced construction in our area?
Well, if you just walk through Lodo or all those close-in neighborhoods of downtown, we always dreamed of people walking to work, and that was our goal when we first put lofts above the wine coop. We never thought we'd see that kind of construction. We also never thought we'd see it all being rental. And that's certainly not healthy long-term for a community. We are the #1 magnet in America right now for millennials, for 18 to 34-year-olds. And yet, if they can't find a place to buy, they're going to move away. There was a bill to address construction defects that was introduced at the very end of the legislative session last year. We weren't able to get it through, but again, like so many things, just like being the first state to regulate methane, I think getting both sides in the room to sit down, roll up their sleeves and say, all right, where's the win-win here? I think that's where we're going to find a solution, and I think we'll get something done this session.
Governor, now to rapid questions, about 15 seconds on these if you could. Do you believe Colorado should require a valid form of identification prior to allowing a person to vote?
Well, we have an all-mail ballot, so when they register, there should be a valid form of ID when they get registered to vote. And then when they get their ballot at home, they mail it in.
So that should take care of that. Do you believe that curriculum should be driven by local school boards or at the state and federal level?
I think that the way Colorado works is that the curriculum is driven by local school boards. But we've got to recognize that we have national assessments, right? The AP exams are a national assessment, and if we want to reject those, we're going to limit the choices of our kids to get credit for what they've done in high school when they go to college, especially if they go, out of state. But even in CU and CSU, they use AP credits to give kids credit, give them credit for the work they've done in high school.
Sure. Do you support increasing Colorado's minimum wage from $8 an hour to $10.10 an hour, as President Obama has set for federal contractors?
Well, we have in Colorado our own, in our Constitution, an inflation-adjusted minimum wage. That being said, I believe working people should be able to afford to pay rent, and I think that if the national minimum wage was raised, and certainly I would lobby to make sure that tip credit stays in place, that there's an accommodation for 16, 17-year-olds getting their first job, that they wouldn't have to pay it at the full minimum wage. But I would support a $10 minimum wage.
Governor, we'll get you out of here on this one. What is Colorado's best kept secret?
I think by far, and I just spent the last 3 days, did a loop all the way around northern Colorado, so I covered about 1,000 miles in the last 3 days. And it is a beautiful landscape, but our best kept secrets are people. And you look at the 13 federal disasters we went through, and then to go from 40th to 4th in job creation and become the #1 fastest growing economy in America, with all that in our way, that takes a remarkable population, a remarkable group of people, which is what we have in Colorado.
Governor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Twice. I want to make sure that we get you something fresh. All right, Mr. Hess, our first question is, if elected, what would you do in your first 6 months in office to enhance economic development in Colorado?
Well, it gets right down to my platform's core, and that's leave people alone. It's much more so than just looking through regulations and finding out what we can trim. It's overall convincing the boards, the various regulatory agencies themselves, to take a large step back, to let businesses operate as they see best fit for themselves, as long as they don't harm others or the environment. So without doing any damage, we can do quite a bit of good for our economy in Colorado just by having trust and faith that people are here to make themselves and others prosperous and successful in the process.
Okay. Governor Hickenlooper answered this question a moment ago. As governor, what steps would you take to lessen the regulatory burden on small businesses in Colorado?
Well, again, there's a lot of boards that report to the governor, and those boards the governor can appoint positions to. So it's about getting people that understand the Constitution, understand economics, and understand the overall outcomes and ramifications of the regulations that are passed and the rules placed upon businesses that really have the most impact. We've seen in Florida how libertarians getting into the Soil and Water Conservation Board, they basically shut that board down because they realized they had nothing to do and they were just wasting tax money. So getting libertarians into these positions is crucial to really reeling things back in.
Okay. We're on to the next question, which is, what is your plan as governor to address the funding for maintenance and capital expenditure of the state's infrastructure, for example, transportation and water projects?
Well, we need to stop shortchanging ourselves. In the Constitution, Article 10 governs governor's revenue. And one thing the faster fees did was increase the licensure costs of vehicles on the roads in Colorado. Unfortunately, much of that money is going towards administrative overhead and other, efficiency operations and other items like that. But the Constitution dictates that any money received for the licensure of vehicles needs to go directly to road maintenance, not bureaucracy. So we're shortchanging ourselves in many areas like that. I'd like to see that corrected.
All right. On to some rapid response. If you can keep these to 15, 20 seconds, it would be great. Do you believe Colorado should require a form of identification for folks to get that ballot?
Well, it's a little late for that, unfortunately. As Governor Hickenlooper mentioned, we do have an all-mail ballot now. Unfortunately, those ballots will be going out to addresses that we don't know if the people are there or not anymore, and there's no guarantee that the people that do receive the ballot will be sending it back fraudulently. There's no verification whatsoever. And in fact, if you sign the witness line, there's no signature verification performed at all in Colorado.
Do you believe that curriculum for our school children should be driven by local school boards or at a state or even federal level?
In 1948, we ran a ballot initiative to create the State Board of Education, which has gone through millions of taxpayer dollars with not a lot of benefit, unfortunately. I'd like to see a ballot initiative to eliminate the State Board of Education and move to total control for each district, because the districts themselves have various needs that only the districts should have say over.
All right. Do you support increasing Colorado's minimum wage from $8 an hour to $10.10 an hour, as President Obama has set for federal contractors?
I do not support increasing the minimum wage. In fact, I support eliminating it. I want high school kids to be able to go out and train right out of high school. We lack skilled trades in Colorado. We're lacking the manufacturing sector, and companies won't come here unless we have the skilled worker forces necessary to drive those factories.
All right, we're going to get you out of here on the easy one. Colorado's best kept secret is what?
Oh, I'd say the drive. I've been driving all over the state. I've logged over 22,000 miles in this campaign. And really, it's the drive. I continually hit the roads at different times throughout the day, throughout the evening, and I continue to see beautiful scenery, wonderful people every step of the way. And it's just the ability to travel and enjoy our state, I think, that a lot of people seem to miss these days.
All of those hours, and it was just Interstate 25. Who knew? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our Green Party candidate, Mr. Harry Henry. I'll make sure I get some different questions here. Some of them I don't mind asking again, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. All right, Mr. Hemby, welcome. Our first long-form question is one that Governor Hickenlooper had. We have experienced some divisive issues over the last few years, led to Colorado counties exploring seceding from their own state. As governor, what would you do to repair those relationships and bring the state back together, or are you in support of the secession happening?
No, I'm not in support of secession. I do understand that places in the state outside, basically outside Denver and the Front Range, have reason to be upset because of their relatively powerless position in the state legislature. What I would do, and this take a lot of discussion, but just think about this. Let's redistrict so that instead of having single-member gerrymandered districts that Democrat and Republican elected officials create, let's have 8 districts in Colorado, 8 major watersheds, and have 4 senators from each watershed to make up the Senate. That gives standing or power or whatever you want to call it. What does that mean?
Your time is up. 1 minute per answer, sir. 1 minute per answer.
That was a minute. Okay, and then I'll just finish by saying in the House of Representatives would be proportionally represented by population in each of the watersheds.
Okay, fair enough. Good way to wrap it up. What are your thoughts on the spiraling costs of post-secondary education, and what would you do as governor to control this?
Well, 2 things. First, in student loans, first, we have a downward spiral of state revenue, and our higher education funding has dropped, ever since the Slumlords Bill of Rights was passed 22 years ago. And the legislature just needs to revamp our whole tax policy. Not a lot of time to go into that. The second thing I would do is talk about forming a state-owned bank that would drive economic development, first with loans to college students, interest-free, and the second in my priority would be to support the industrial hemp industry in Colorado.
And our final question before we get to some rapid fire, you'll have a minute for this as well. Should there be local control at the city or county level regarding oil and gas?
I think ultimately local communities are responsible for the health and safety of their citizens. So if the state is failing to protect the health of the citizens, the locals should have control. And I have a really good point. Well, I think I made it before that the pollution is going on every day, and so the state's not doing its job.
On to the rapid response questions now, Mr. Hempy. Do you believe Colorado should require people to have identification before they get a ballot, even if it's a mail-in ballot, when they sign up, register to vote?
Sounds good, but the fact is that a lot of segments of the population are challenged having that identification, especially old people, and it's not as fair as it seems, so no.
Do you believe that curriculum for our children should be driven by local school boards or done at a higher state, maybe even federal level?
I think the local school board is responsible, and it's up to them to see the wisdom of some state or federal help. I don't like the high stakes federal testing. I don't think it's fair to teachers, and I don't like that. But yeah, it's up to the school board. However, we have a problem with money in school board elections, and our local school boards aren't as local as they used to be, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, Mr. Hempy, now we'll move on to the minimum wage question. Do you support raising it from $8 to $10.10 an hour, as it is now for federal contractors?
No, I think it ought to be up to individual cities, because one size doesn't fit all as far as the cost of living from one place to another in Colorado. And yeah.
Okay. And Colorado's best kept secret is what?
Oh, there are a lot. I'll go with water, the water plan, water policy. I was surprised that I think something like 80 years ago is when we started diverting water from the western slope to the South Platte and Arkansas watersheds. We need, especially in Denver, especially on the Front Range, to put a lot more emphasis in water conservation, water reuse, and long-term sustainable green philosophy says stop that diversion when you can.
Mr. Hempy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mr. Harrington. All right.
But listen, that's unaffiliated.
Unaffiliated.
Yeah.
My apologies, sir. My
All
apologies.
the press here, you understand, it's unaffiliated.
Everyone got that?
When you say I'm independent, it's a misnomer. It just is too broad.
All right,
It
so
doesn't really stand.
let's get on to the questions now, sir. What is your plan as governor to address the funding for maintenance and capital expenditure of the state's infrastructure, for example, transportation and water projects?
You know, again, my emphasis is tourism. We are a service state. We have an opportunity in this state like no other. Colorado has put its emphasis on our water by using it and wasting it. And water is our gold. It is what makes Colorado really move. And so in order to really show that and demonstrate is the fact that, you know, we have a wildlife division that runs on its own, out of fees alone. If we ruin our fishing, what happens? You know, these are the things we have to consider. Are we an oil and gas, or are we really an environmental moving towards renewables and sustainables? This is what we have to ask ourselves in this election. Driving around this state is beautiful, but also devastating.
All right, Mr. Fiorino. On to our next question. You'll have a minute for this as well. What should be the role of the state when it comes to addressing illegal immigrants and immigration?
You know, again, it goes back to the federal government. 2006, Governor Owens called a special session, and we have on the books some of the toughest laws that anyone has. The thing is that employers need those workers. So we need to have a way to get these workers, but we have to deal with it without destroying families. So we have an opportunity in Colorado, again, to empower our federal government to do something. That's all.
And to our last 1 minute question here. As governor, what steps would you take to lessen the regulatory burden on small businesses in Colorado?
Well, I've been a business owner for over 20 years. I've had a performing arts business. As I say, I'm moving into running a theater situation. I have an opportunity to express the fact that environmental hope is really what this state needs to concentrate on and lead in that regard. And so I know that, again, we have an opportunity in Colorado to just take us forward, not back.
Okay, Mr. Fiorino, now we'll hit some rapid fire questions for you. You've heard them, so hopefully you have a chance to formulate an opinion or two. Do you believe that Colorado should require a more robust identification vetting process before people get their ballot?
You know, as far as the ballot, I just want people to vote. I want people to go to sos.org and check your registration after this meeting today. Because a third of you in this room aren't registered to vote.
Do you believe that curriculum should be driven by local school boards for schools or at a state or even federal level?
Well, I feel, again, local control is what Colorado's about. Home rule is local control. I like to see that, you know, we have a state education department that has opportunity. But for the healthiest state not to have a physical education standard is ridiculous.
Do you support increasing Colorado's minimum wage from $8 an hour up to $10.10 an hour as it is now for federal contractors?
The first thing we need to do is equal the pay for women. So unless we do that, you know, let's not talk about wages. Let's get the ladies to have their equal access to fair wages.
Okay. And what is Colorado's best kept secret in your opinion?
My best kept secret is a gentleman named Wilson E. Sisti. Wilson E. Sisti. That's the best kept secret. And I'm challenging every candidate in this room, as well as anybody, to bring up another official pioneer that has done more and has invested more in Colorado ever. So that's a challenge I'm putting out right now, that Colorado needs to look at its history. All right? Evan, I just want to put this out there. We celebrated Columbus Day yesterday. Colorado started that holiday, and we can repeal that holiday by making it Discovery Day, Native American Day, and we can bring, again, awareness to our earliest pioneers who came to Colorado, stayed in Colorado, and made Colorado what it is today. And that's Wilson E. Sisti.
Our unaffiliated candidate, Mr. Paul Fiorino. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it was Alfred E. Packer. He ate 4 of the 5 Democrats in Teller County.
Well, now we know what that answer is. All right. Skip that. You'll have a minute to answer each of these first
Thank
three.
you very much.
Colorado voters decided the marijuana issue, you'll remember. In retrospect, was this an economically sound decision for Colorado, or has it opened us up to even more challenges?
No, it's the greatest decision that we've made in the last 100 years. People don't know about this plant. This plant is an incredible opportunity for Colorado. We're leading the way, and we need to set the standard for the future.
Okay, you still have about 45 seconds. Is there anything you'd like to tell us why? Over 100 years is a pretty broad term. It's the
That's
best
true.
thing
Well, we
we've
can-
done in 100 years. Why?
Because we are making right what we set wrong. We created, as in my original address, a crony system that was put together to destroy one of the greatest plants that it grows in the ditches. It uses half of the water. You can clean up a Superfund site with hemp. People don't know that. The medical uses are incredible. You can build clothes, homes. Its proteins are available for complete digestion by humans. We have cannabidiol receptors in our brain. Sponges have cannabidiol receptors. This plant is the great hope for Colorado, and the jobs in the future are absolutely incredible. I made it.
You're good, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so as governor, what would you do to lessen the regulatory burden on any small business in Colorado?
I do the same thing I've done in Glendale. We call it the year of freedom, but we're into the second year of freedom right now. We take a law off of the books every city council meeting. Deregulate our lives. It's not necessary to have regulations like this. You and I can figure out how to get along if we don't have a third party interfering. For instance, our building department goes out on Christmas Eve at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and issues a certificate of occupancy for a hotelier. He needed, for his books, to close the year. That year, he needed the certificate of occupancy. We work for the people don't work for us. We get this the wrong way. Deregulate our lives, look each other in the eye, tell the truth, and make sure that you keep your word.
One more question as well. Hold your applause for the end, we appreciate it. We have struggled to attract developers and builders in Jefferson and Adams counties to build for-sale multi-family housing as opposed to building only apartment complexes that would be for rent. The current state of construction defects law seems to stand in their way. What would you do to reform construction defects law and bring back entry-level price construction to our area?
Well, this is one of those circumstances where a builder goes out, buys a unit, tears it down to the studs to find anything he can find wrong with it. This is a fundamental problem in the integrity of that particular attorney's firm. Address that. Cap the defect. Understand that you've got to allow, it's more important to allow people to have family housing than it is for this law firm to make $150 million a year, and it's one law firm. Change that, address it, put it in the light of day, and put this, I got 27 seconds. Wow. I thought this was going to be tougher.
You're efficient.
Efficient. Well, tort reform is necessary in that instance. The common sense aspect of how we treat each other in life is missing. Address it. Leadership means that you'll put it in the light of day and discuss it. Thank you.
All right, so on to rapid response here. No need to look at the clock here.
No, because I'm good at rapid response.
Yeah, obviously, you've done this whole session. We talked about a valid form of identification prior to allowing a person to get a ballot. Do you support that?
Absolutely. It is the fundamental issue of being an American. This idea that you can't get an ID in this society is obscene. Everybody can get an ID. But what we're doing is condoning voter fraud. We have to stop that because we aren't electing officials with people sometimes that are even alive.
Do you believe that curriculum should be driven by local school boards or at the state, maybe even federal level?
I think that's referred to as common floor, I believe. No, it should be driven by the local level. Somebody in Ray, Colorado knows a lot more about Ray, Colorado than somebody in Jefferson County knows, and vice versa.
Do you support increasing Colorado's state minimum wage from $8 to $10.10?
There's a great book by Jim Cox called Minimum Wage, Maximum Damage. We always approach this small segment, the segment that doesn't write letters to the editor, and we destroy their opportunities for jobs. During the last Bush administration, they went through this, and they settled on, we're not going to kill 600,000 jobs, we're only going to kill 300,000. I mean, that's in the record, that they're just going to kill 300,000 to appease somebody's political agenda.
And in your opinion, what is Colorado's best kept secret?
Hemp. High altitude hemp, the ability, right now we've got farmers in Delta County, the biggest ag district in the state, that can't grow hemp because of the Farm Bill. We have a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. We can lead the way on the planet with this plan, and we should embrace it, and leadership is what's required.
Mr. Donovan, thank you so much. All right, first question, we'll just pull right out of here, and it is number 9. Should there be local control at the city or county level regarding oil and gas?
Historically, Colorado's had very strong local control relative to oil and gas development. I've got personal experience with that. Our real estate development up in Lafayette, and it worked very, very well. I think we need to protect that, and the good news in this whole question is that technology now, directional drilling, horizontal drilling, and the multi-well pad sites allow us to be even more flexible, more accommodating, to make sure that the surface rights are protected as well as the mineral rights that are often in a split estate. So I think we've got to protect the historic nature of Colorado laws as they've existed and functioned very, very well for a long time.
Okay, we're on to our next question, a minute for each of these. What should be the role of the state in addressing illegal immigrants?
I think governors are going to be the ones that are going to finally solve this problem by pressuring the federal government to do their job. It's got to be at least these steps. Secure the border. Modernize legal immigration. It's absolutely shameful that in 2014 in a nation like the United States of America, people wait years and years and years to get an answer, yes or no, can I immigrate, when we need a workforce to do it. So modernize legal immigration, then enforce labor laws, and then we can come up with a system where people can come out of the shadows. This is the worst of human indignity, to tolerate people living in shadows like we've done for over 30 years now and not solve the problem. Allow them to come forward, identify themselves, do a background check, pay some sort of restitution that we deem appropriate, and get them legal status so that they can get on with their life and we can be a great nation again.
All right, our final question for a minute, then we'll get into some rapid fire. Colorado voters decided the marijuana issue. In retrospect, was this an economically sound decision for Colorado, or has it opened us up to even more challenges?
Well, I think it's somewhere between what Mike just said and what the governor said the other night when he said it was a reckless decision. I think we're still learning. I know that the people endorsed it. My job as your next governor will be to make sure we regulate it as tightly as we can within the law, respecting that it is the law and it's in our Constitution, but being very objective about the consequences that we do discover. There are some troubling signs from some of the top medical professionals in Colorado about the damage that the high THC marijuana today can do to especially young brains. I think we need to be honest about that as we find that out. I think we need to be honest about what it has meant to our economy. Some believe that it's chased jobs out of the state. I think there's evidence that that probably is the case. But I think we need to continue to be honest and open about this, and especially about the facts as we find them. If the people at some point decide they want to change the law somehow, then we listen to the people. But right now it's in the Constitution. My job is to regulate that law as the Constitution intended.
All right, we'll ask the rapid response questions at this point. You've been sitting in the audience, I'm sure you're
I'll save
familiar
you some
with them.
time.
All right, we're okay. Voter ID, where do you sit?
Yes.
You need voter ID. All right. We're fine. We all have plenty of time for cookies. Do you believe that curriculum should be driven at the local level, each independent school district, at the state level, or even at the federal?
You start by recognizing that nobody loves a child more than mother and dad. And so they ought to be in charge of where and how their child gets educated, and then that next level is that the intimacy of the proxy that's given to the school board. So curriculum, yes. Strong state standards, local control of curriculum and how to achieve those standards, I think is the best way to get to that point.
Local districts help achieve the state standard.
Absolutely.
Do you support the increase in the minimum wage from $8 an hour up to $10.10 an hour?
No, the evidence is overwhelming that is actually counterproductive. Whenever we raise the minimum wage, we actually kill jobs. And the evidence in this supposed recovery we've been through the last 5 years is absolutely tragic. Women have struggled to get jobs. Low-income people have been struggling to get jobs. Minorities especially are the ones left out. Young people. Raising the minimum wage would make it even more difficult for those entry-level jobs to be created. What we need is a robust economy, one that's really growing at 4.5%, 5%, one that's across the entire state, not just for parts of this state, and one that frankly I think is built on the energy industry, which instead of celebrating, we've been punishing with ever more regulation.
So you saved the time for that.
I sure did.
Well played. What is Colorado's best kept secret? You've been around a lot lately. What have you seen?
We're close to it. The Colorado School of Mines, ranked #1 by USA Today for engineering schools in the entire nation, and I think a lot of our citizens even wouldn't know that, and a lot of the nation and the world. This is an international treasure that we've got right next door, and we've got many things to be proud of in Colorado, but that's one that comes to my mind right now.
Yeah. All right. My son Matthew's in the audience today, 12 years old. I hope he becomes an engineer, and I have great options here within the state. Mr. Beaupre, thank you so much. All right. We're going to get on to the 2 minutes podium as we did to open the forum today. They'll have 2 minutes to address you. We were drawn at random prior to the event. We want to note that a scheduling conflict has arisen, and the office that all of you are attempting to run for, Governor Hickenlooper had to step out, so he will not be a part of this. Mr. Harry Hempy will begin this process. Mr. Hempy.
Okay, let's talk about democracy and plutocracy. Our election system basically is a plutocracy, or has been, and I'd like to see that change to a democracy. Even this year would be great. An informed electorate is the basis of a good democracy. And so at the risk of being a political wonk or policy wonk, here's what I would do. First of all, I would put the names of every candidate for office in the blue book that talks about judges and amendments and propositions.
Yeah.
As it is today, the first time most people learn who's running for office is when they open up their ballot. That's wrong.
Yeah.
There needs to be a law that says the Elections Division will inform the public, all registered voters, of who's on the ballot in that blue book. Secondly, debates. We've had open debates, we've had private sponsored corporate debates, but they're not sufficient. The state should host debates for all contested races, for all candidates.
Yes.
Third, we need to change our voting system. Our voting system is a vote for one, winner take all system that creates and perpetuates two-party government. And we need a multi-party voting system so that more candidates can be in front of the electorate and have their perspectives known and have a credible chance of winning. Finally, I've used my 2 minutes, so I don't get to talk about overturning Citizens United, but we need to do that too. Thank you very much.
All too often what we do in these circumstances is become very deadly serious about it, especially in a closing remark. Well, one of the things in this country we're losing is our ability to laugh at ourselves. I was raised as an Irish cowboy. The Irish need not apply. You learn very quickly that a 200-pound animal, a 2,000-pound animal, everything around you could kill you. So you start to develop this sense of your environment. This idea that we can no longer laugh at ourselves is critical, because with it is going our heritage and the roots, the things that we depend on for guidance in the future we learned in the past. Well, it sums up in this little story, and those of you in this room that remember Colorado in the 60s will relate to this. There's 3 guys out in a fishing boat, and they're there to tell lies to each other and drink beer, not to really fish. They go silent, and one of them looks and says to the others, "Do you see this?" He said, "Is that Jesus walking up to the boat?" He said, "I don't know. I don't know what Jesus looked like." He walked up, he looked at the first one, and he said, "You suffered your entire life with debilitating arthritis." He lays hands on him, heals him. He stands up in the boat, tears running down his face. Looks at the second one. He said, "You lost your eye. Your brother asked me for forgiveness for putting your eye out with a slingshot, and I forgave him as you did." He looked at the third one. I'm timing this. How am I doing? He looked at the third one. He threw his hands up. He said, "Oh, Jesus, please don't touch me. I'm on permanent disability." This is what's happened to our attitude about how we operate our lives and what it means to be a Coloradan. We need to bring that back, and we can, starting on November 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again for hosting this and including all the candidates.
Yes.
I'm about education. I'm an educator. I work for the city of Lakewood as an educator. I believe that education, yes, has the power to bring our students to a place of awareness for not only their life moving forward, but for the fact that education really is about touching each and every one of us. We have to educate ourselves about these candidates, about every issue that is facing Colorado. I'm the environmental governor. I've carried the environmental hope for the last 2 elections as well. I introduced John Hickenlooper to the fact that Colorado has that capacity for leadership. I have the opportunity to, again, express that water is our gold, and that hemp is our new industry, and that the opportunity with those two work hand in hand for Colorado's economy. And then, of course, reforms. Yes, we need reforms in the penal system. We need reforms in our health system. We need reforms in our taxations and regulations. But we, again, need to continue to realize that if we have anything, we have health. And health is what keeps us alive. I was a quadriplegic back in 1993. That's right, got hit by a Guillain-Barré. And that put me down for quite a while, and yet I was able to recover and able to move again. And I just realized that with that experience, that we would take much too much for granted. And so just having a smile is really what we can give today. And so with this opportunity of running for governor, of being the father of a state that I love, and I've lived here since Temple Hoyne Buell brought my father from New York in 1955. And he was a great philanthropist and a great developer, but he also found a way to bring us to this place today. Colorado has a great future. I'm Paul Noel Fiorino, and I'm asking for your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
My thanks to the Arvada Chamber and everybody involved with this today. It's been a wonderful forum. It's nice to again see so many friends. I decided to run for governor, for among many other reasons, because the reality settled in that governors can actually get something done. It's different than a lot of political jobs. Policy making is very important. Being able to cast a vote on important legislation is certainly an honor. The governors actually can move the needle. And I look at our great state and that opportunity thing that draws so many of us here, and like me, a native kept me here all my life. I never wanted to be anywhere else. I see that opportunity going other places. And I look for, am I right or am I wrong? Art Laffer and Steve Moore measure this on an annual basis. They do a ranking of the 50 states. And in the last 4 years, Colorado has fallen from number 2 in economic outlook and opportunity to number 22. George Mason University does the same thing. They say we fell from 7 to number 19. I could give you a handful of other economic reports that say we're middle of the pack. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been here any length of time, let me ask you, when was average ever good enough for Colorado? We're better than this, and we know we're better than this. And the way to get better is by going back to that truism, believing and trusting in people. Ronald Reagan told us when government expands, freedom necessarily contracts. Freedom, that's what drew the first people to America. That's what drew my grandfather here. That's probably what drew your ancestors here as well, was the opportunity for freedom. We now have government trying to control everything we think, do, say, buy, sell. I used to say they control our imagination if they could, but actually they are, because they're turning us into a bunch of cynics, careful and restrained and holding back. That's not Colorado. We're bigger and better, and we can get better by turning this thing on its head, believing and trusting in people and getting government out of the way. That can begin in January, and my pledge to you is that on my watch every single day, that'll be the question that drives me on, that I try to answer in the affirmative. Is it for your freedom? Does it preserve, protect your freedom, or does it infringe on it? And if it infringes upon it, we're going to grab it by its roots and we're going to throw it away. Thanks very much. I appreciate your support and your vote in this critical election. God bless you.
With the closing remark, Mr. Matthew Hess. Mr. Hess.
Our system of government has checks and balances. There's 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Why is it that we allow ourselves to be governed by just 2 major parties? We have 3 branches. Shouldn't we at least have 3 parties?
Yes.
We don't need a monopoly in any one area. In fact, we recognize in society that monopolies are not always a good thing. So we should not allow ourselves to continue with a monopoly in politics. I submit to you today that the governor's office is the ideal place to end the political monopoly in Colorado, to end the control, the rubber stamping, and to move towards a real system of checks and balances and restore the significance of the governor's office as it should be in our system of government. And what I'd like to see is a third party or an independent candidate, hopefully myself, in that office to do exactly that, to perform a system of checks and balances, and to use a hockey metaphor, to keep the junk out of the net. I'd like to see an independent candidate perform a check and balance on the two-party system itself, so we can get real discussion, real ideas, and leave people alone once again. Let everyone live their lives as they see best. We are all owners of our own destiny. We need to assume that responsibility for ourselves once again. I believe it's possible this fall. With your support, I hope to be the next governor of Colorado. My name is Matthew Hess. Thank you for having me.
Candidates who took time to join us this morning. Obviously, it's a busy day for some of you with multiple forums. We thank you for being a part of this. It was very educational. We want to thank also the event sponsors, the Super Credit Union, Professional Roofing and Exteriors, Cherry Creek Mortgage, La Patisserie Francois provided the cookies at each seat. And we want to remind everyone that there were a couple of write-in candidates who were here as well today that we did not get to hear from. Marcus Giovanni and Susan Wolfe, if you will please stand and be recognized. Thank you all. Candidates have placed campaign information in the lobby. Please feel free to take a look at all of that prior to leaving. My name is Jim Seidlecki, Director of Public Information in Adams County. On behalf of Cami Welch and the Arvada Chamber, we want to thank all of you for attending and to the candidates for participating in a very successful forum. Enjoy your Tuesday.